My parents used the money saved for my education to support my gifted brother. A decade later, when they needed financial help for medical expenses, I reminded them who they had invested in. He never graduated and was still living in their old basement. Ever since I can remember, there was always a lingering feeling of resentment that festered in the corners of my mind, a dark irony about how my life was charted by my parents' misguided investment. They had saved every penny for my education, a promise of a future brimming with possibility and success. And yet, when the opportunity arose to invest in my gifted brother, they redirected those funds with a blind, almost stubborn faith in his potential. I used to watch as his early years were filled with lofty ambitions and grand declarations about his destiny, his eyes sparkling with dreams as vast as the night sky. But as the years went by, that sparkle dimmed into a dull glimmer of complacency. It all began with whispered promises and subtle brags about his intellectual prowess. At family gatherings, he would recount tales of profound ideas and future innovations, leaving us in a mix of awe and skepticism. Meanwhile, I was expected to focus on my studies, to be the diligent child destined for a bright academic future. Life, however, had its own plans. While I toiled over textbooks and attended classes with unwavering commitment, my brother drifted along a path that was more reminiscent of aimless wandering than a clear-cut journey. The money that could have paved the way for my own success was funneled into his myriad interests, from experimental art projects to dubious entrepreneurial schemes that fizzled out almost as soon as they ignited. As a child, I didn't grasp the gravity of my parents' financial decisions, but as I matured, their full impact became painfully clear. My college years were haunted by the constant comparison between us, a relentless reminder of what might have been if the funds had been allocated differently. I observed with mounting disillusionment as my brother's supposed genius evaporated, replaced by a series of unfulfilled promises and half-hearted attempts to find direction. He often retreated to the old family basement, a crumbling relic of our childhood, where he lingered in perpetual inertia. That basement, with its peeling wallpaper and stale air, became a living testament to a promise unkept. The irony struck me hard during one particularly trying period when our parents, long the pillars of our family, found themselves in desperate need of financial help to cover mounting medical expenses. A decade had passed and the roles were reversed. The very hand that had once invested in what they believed to be the future brilliance of my brother now extended toward me, seeking a remedy for the consequences of choices made years ago. With a mix of bitterness and grim resolve, I reminded them who they had truly invested in, while my brother had been promised the world. He had never even stepped out of that basement. His talents remained as dormant as the dust that had long settled on the old furniture. That stark revelation unleashed a cascade of emotions within me, a volatile blend of love, resentment, and sorrow. I found myself grappling with an internal conflict. The desire to support my family clashed violently with the anger over a future squandered in silence. Every time I saw my brother lounging in that dilapidated space, it was as if I were staring at the tangible result of misplaced hope, a constant silent rebuke to the sacrifices I had made. In those moments, I was forced to confront the harsh reality that the investment in potential had yielded nothing more than shattered dreams and lingering regret. In the weeks that followed, I began to unravel the tangled threads of our family history, desperate to understand the origins of this dissonance. There was a time when my brother's ambitions seemed almost magical, his ideas the stuff of legend in our small circle. But as the years wore on, that magic dissolved, replaced by the harsh truths of unfulfilled potential and the relentless passage of time. I wondered if the universe had conspired against him, or if fate had decreed that his brilliance was never meant to shine. More likely, I thought bitterly, it was simply the cruel irony of misplaced priorities, a reminder that not every investment yields the hoped-for returns, and some dreams, no matter how grand, are doomed to languish in the shadows. I vividly recall one night when the tension in our home reached a fever pitch. What began as polite conversation quickly devolved into a barrage of accusations and regrets, with each family member exposing their rawest grievances. That night, I made the fateful decision to confront the painful truth. After years of meticulously building a future that I hoped would be free from the errors of the past, I found myself forced to acknowledge the cost of my parents' choices. With a mix of anger and sorrow, I recounted the long history of missed opportunities, the promise squandered in a forgotten basement, and the dreams sacrificed on the altar of misguided hope. I reminded them with unyielding candor that investing in the wrong person could cost more than money. It could steal your very future. As the harsh words gave way to a heavy, oppressive silence, I sat alone with my thoughts, pondering the nature of family and the burden of expectations. I began to question how love, often heralded as a savior, could be so easily entangled with disappointment and regret. I remembered countless evenings spent in quiet introspection, cycling between hope and disillusionment as I watched my brother's gifted nature slowly erode into apathy. That once promising beacon of potential had become nothing more than a distant, fading melody, a tune drowned out by years of neglect and inaction. In the aftermath of that turbulent night, I resolved to confront my own path forward. The fallout of our confrontation lingered like a stubborn stain on our family portrait, and I increasingly found myself alienated from the man I once called my brother. His days blurred together in a haze of lethargy and denial, each fleeting moment of introspection swallowed by the inertia he had come to embody. Every attempt I made to engage him was met with hollow reassurances and empty glances, a stark reminder that nothing had changed. At work, my mind often wandered back to the past. I questioned every decision, every sacrifice, wondering if the cost of my parents' investment had been far too steep. The irony was palpable. The funds meant to secure my success had been diverted to a dead-end dream, leaving me to shoulder not only my own aspirations, but also the weight of a long-forgotten promise. This heavy burden isolated me even as it spurred a fierce determination to prove that I could rise above it all. Yet amid the despair, I discovered a strange beauty in the struggle, a raw, unfiltered authenticity that only life's most trying moments can reveal. I began documenting my inner turmoil in a battered journal, each scribbled note a small act of defiance against the forces that had tried to define me. In those pages, I found a voice that was both fierce and vulnerable, daring to confront our family's fractured dynamic with brutal honesty. Each word became a stepping stone, guiding me away from the shadows of the past and towards a future that, while uncertain, held the promise of redemption. In the quiet hours of the night, as the world slept and the steady tick of the clock filled the silence, I would reread my journal entries. Every sentence was a testament to my slow transformation, from resignation to a burning desire for change. It was a gradual evolution, a reclamation of identity forged in the crucible of loss and disappointment. I began to understand that the pain of the past was not a chain meant to hold me back, but rather a harsh teacher whose lessons would shape the person I was destined to become. Looking back now, I see our family's journey as a microcosm of a universal struggle, a battle to reconcile the promises of youth with the often brutal realities of adulthood. The decisions we make, even those driven by love and hope, can sometimes lead us down paths as destructive as they are inevitable. And yet, within that inevitability, there lies a glimmer of beauty, a chance to rise from the ashes of our mistakes and transform regret into a catalyst for growth. As I began rebuilding my life piece by piece, I clung to the belief that redemption was possible, that even the deepest wounds could eventually heal. In the days that followed, as I immersed myself in work and channeled my emotions into creative pursuits, I discovered that the journal was no longer just a repository of pain. It had evolved into a chronicle of transformation. Each entry, each raw confession, served as a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, one could find the strength to redefine one's narrative. Yet, despite these small victories, the shadow of my brother's inaction loomed large, a constant reminder of the price of my parents' misplaced investment. Every so often, in the dim early morning light, I would catch a glimpse of him, a figure silhouetted against the remnants of our past, and wonder if he might ever break free from the inertia that had come to define his existence. Now, as I prepare To close this chapter on a tumultuous period of my life, I recognize that every hardship has been an inescapable lesson, a lesson in the art of self-determination. The legacy of my parents' decisions and my brother's inertia no longer defines me. Instead, it fuels my determination to live life on my own terms. Though the journey ahead remains uncertain, I am resolved to transform the scars of the past into stepping stones toward a future that is unequivocally mine. In the aftermath of that transformative visit to the basement, I embarked on a journey that I never imagined would force me to confront the most intimate parts of my soul. It was as if that decaying space, once a repository of our family's shattered dreams, had given birth to a fragile hope, a belief that even the most painful memories could serve as catalysts for genuine change. I left my childhood home with a heavy yet determined heart, acutely aware that the path toward healing was neither straightforward nor devoid of setbacks. My days became a mosaic of long reflections and deliberate actions aimed at reclaiming the narrative of my own life. Every morning, as I woke to the gentle hum of the city, I reminded myself that I had the power to redefine who I was, independent of the legacy of misdirected investments and unfulfilled promises. I started small. Journaling became a daily ritual, a silent conversation with my inner self where I confronted my lingering doubts and fears. With each carefully chosen word, I chipped away at the fortress of bitterness that had once encased me. The process was painstaking and at times excruciatingly raw. I relived memories of family dinners where unspoken grievances hung as thick as the aroma of overcooked meals, and nights when the weight of disappointment was so overwhelming it felt as if I were drowning in a sea of regret. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, subtle shifts began to emerge. I found solace in the unexpected, a smile from a stranger on the bus, a kind word from a colleague, or the simple act of watching the world wake up with a sense of quiet wonder. Each of these moments, though seemingly trivial, acted as a salve for my wounded spirit. They were reminders that life, in its infinite complexity, was not defined solely by past failures, but by the myriad opportunities for renewal that lay hidden in everyday encounters. One crisp winter evening, driven by an impulse I could neither ignore nor fully understand, I reached out to my brother. It had been far too long since our last genuine conversation. Our interactions had been marred by long silences and a palpable distance that spoke of years of mutual disappointment. I found him sitting by a window in a dimly lit room, the winter, rain etching ephemeral patterns on the glass. His eyes, once so full of misplaced promise, now carried the weight of quiet resignation. As I sat down beside him, the air between us was charged with unspoken histories and the tentative possibility of reconciliation. For hours we talked, not in the accusatory tones of the past, but with a raw honesty that was both unfamiliar and deeply healing. He recounted the years spent in that self-imposed exile, the crushing pressure of expectations, and the silent battles fought in the confines of a crumbling basement. I listened, not with judgment, but with an empathetic understanding that acknowledged the complexity of our shared experiences. In his voice, I recognized the echoes of a wounded spirit, one that had been forced to retreat from a world that demanded perfection at the expense of genuine self-worth. That conversation marked the beginning of a slow, tentative reconciliation. We both recognized that our lives had been irrevocably shaped by a series of choices, some made by our parents, some by ourselves, and that the resentment of the past could only be disarmed by facing it head-on. Over the next several months, our interactions grew more frequent and less burdened by the weight of old grievances. We began to share our dreams and our disappointments, finding in each other a mirror that reflected not just the pain of lost opportunities, but also the resilience inherent in the human spirit. As I immersed myself in the pursuit of personal growth, I discovered that transformation was as much an internal journey as it was a series of external actions. I enrolled in creative writing classes, channeling my turbulent emotions into stories, and essays that resonated with those who, like me, had once felt trapped by the shackles of expectation. I volunteered at local community centers, using my experiences to mentor young minds who were grappling with their own battles against self-doubt and societal pressure. In these endeavors, I found a profound sense of purpose, a realization that The scars of my past, far from being mere reminders of failure, could serve as beacons of hope for others. There were nights when solitude crept in unbidden, and the memories of lost time and squandered potential threatened to engulf me once again. In those moments, I would retreat to the solace of my journal, where every entry was an act of defiance against the despair that had once defined my existence. I began to see my journey not as a series of missteps, but as a complex tapestry woven from threads of pain, perseverance, and ultimately redemption. The old narratives of blame and regret were gradually replaced by a more compassionate understanding of life's inherent unpredictability, a realization that sometimes the most profound growth emerges from the depths of our darkest experiences. My brother, too, started to venture out of the shadows of the basement. I watched with a mix of cautious optimism and lingering apprehension as he enrolled in a community college and began exploring interests that had long lain dormant. There were no grand proclamations of genius or sudden bursts of brilliance, only small, deliberate steps toward a life that he could call his own. It was a humbling process, one that reinforced the truth that every individual's journey is marked by moments of both struggle and triumph. In those quiet, unassuming actions, I found the seeds of transformation, the possibility that even a life seemingly defined by inertia could, with time and support, blossom into something unexpected and meaningful. As seasons changed, our family began to heal in ways that none of us had anticipated. The once impenetrable rift between my parents and me softened as we collectively came to terms with the fallibility of our choices and the imperfection of our dreams. There was a newfound openness at family gatherings, a willingness to acknowledge past mistakes without being trapped by them. My parents, too, began to see the value in the person I was becoming, not merely as a recipient of their sacrifices, but as an individual capable of carving out his own destiny. In the quiet moments of shared understanding, we discovered that love could be a powerful agent of transformation, capable of mending even the deepest of wounds. Standing at the crossroads of my life, I now look back on those turbulent years not with bitterness, but with a sober appreciation for the lessons they imparted. The echoes of past disappointments still reverberate within me, but they no longer hold the power to define my future. Instead, they serve as reminders of the strength that lies in resilience, the unwavering capacity to rise above the missteps of the past and to forge a path illuminated by self-awareness and hope. My journey is far from over. Each day presents new challenges, new opportunities to reaffirm the commitment I made to myself, to live a life unburdened by the mistakes of others, to embrace the uncertain beauty of the present, and to cultivate a future that is undeniably my own. In the quiet spaces between heartbeats, I've come to understand that redemption is not a singular moment of epiphany, but a continuous process of transformation, where every setback is met with the possibility of renewal. And so, with the remnants of old pain and the promise of new beginnings, I continue forward. I remain committed to the belief that even the most flawed investments of love and hope can yield extraordinary dividends when met with the courage to change. My story, woven from threads of regret, forgiveness, and eventual triumph, is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. As I navigate the winding path ahead, I carry with me the lessons of the past, not as burdens, but as guiding lights, each one illuminating a step toward a future crafted with determination, empathy, and the unwavering resolve to redefine my destiny.